through all that. Yeah. So you bet.
Well, sweet. Sounds good. Well, cool. Well, welcome to Champion School, everybody. I'm your host, Austin Byler. I got Dean Williams, Team Elite Performance, co-hosting this baby with me. And we've got Coach Brian Green, Washington State University, the Cougs, baseball program, incredible human being. I'm bringing a lot of light to the baseball community, especially during this time. And we're going to talk a lot about culture, mindset, leadership, all the above that goes into the game. Before we get going, if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A. If the Facebook thing is working, you can put them on the Facebook page. I don't know if it's up or not. I'm not even going to check. But if it does, put it in there. We'll be able to answer some of the questions that you guys may have. But Brian, appreciate you hopping on, man. This is a pleasure.
Well, thanks for having us. I mean, with our coaches, our players, everybody, I mean, every opportunity that you get, to speak the gospel about what we're trying to accomplish here and what we're about, we're going to take full advantage of it. So I'm really honored for the opportunity. It's a great opportunity for us to talk about the Cougs, and then, to be able to talk about culture and coaching staff and development. I just eat that up. It's a drug to talk about it and learn from that. So really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man. I think it's incredible just looking back on some of the things that you accomplished at New Mexico State. I remember seeing some of the offensive stats, and a lot of people will see you for the offense, but I think it's more the mindset and the culture that you developed there while you were there. But I mean, absolutely rake show. Like, these dudes mash. I played there one time and the ball flies a little bit, but I don't care where you're playing. You still got to hit the baseball, right? Like, you still got to be ready to hit. So that was cool to see. And then having a few athletes that I know just from down the stream that are at Washington State now love playing for you, which is a testament to who you are. It's been incredible to see, man. But I just want to hear a little bit more about your story, man. I know you've been at a bunch of different universities, a bunch of different schools. What kind of led you into coaching? And then how did you end up at this position now where you're in the Pac-12 leading a really good program?
Well, now, living a dream, literally, to become a Pac-12 head coach. Growing up in Temecula, California, and Southern California when it was a tiny town, that's the goal, is to become a head coach in the Pac. But, I've always known and really enjoyed coaching or teaching, talking a system. I'll never forget, someone says, when did you know you wanted to coach? As I'm a junior college player and I'm down in a bullpen working a camp at Riverside Community College for Dennis Rogers. And, I've got like 3 things on the tee and I'm getting a bang out of it. I'm loving talking about this off the tee and connecting with that player. So I always knew I wanted to coach and broke into it as soon as I was done playing in New Mexico State with Elliott Avent. And from there just bounced around like crazy, doing what you're supposed to do as a coach, work for nothing, gain experience, stay loyal, stay in the game. And then when you get your phone call, to get into a higher level, you're going to get that tap on the shoulder and are you ready for it? But I went from New Mexico State student assistant to Riverside Community College. My first check for the month at Riverside Community College was $80 for the month. So I proudly brought that home to Becky and said, honey, we are on our way. 2 years at Cal Poly Pomona D2, 2 years at Chapman University D3, and literally at 30 years of age, I get a massive break to go be the volunteer at Oregon State. Worked with Gary Henderson and Dan Spencer as assistants. Pat Casey, obviously legendary coach. That was where I was my first Division I opportunity as the volunteer, coach first base. And then I just was able to catch a bunch of breaks, and from there I went to University of San Diego with Rich Hill. I'll talk more about that later. That was a big year for me in my life. That was my first hitting coach opportunity. We won the league. We led the league in offense, and Rich is just a great offensive mind. So I got an opportunity from there after winning the league to go to Hawaii, who had not hit the year before, and become their hitting coach for 2 years. And after that, I get a call from Coach Savage at UCLA, my dream school. I mean, I grew up a massive Bruin fan. I know that's elite. I can't say that anymore. But I got a chance to go work for Coach Savage for 4 years. There's a cool story about that as well, how we connected there. But at the end of the day, it really became – we bumped into each other. I was recruiting in Hawaii, and that was how we kind of connected. But was with Coach Savage for 4 years at UCLA, had a great run there. I was a part of his first year, and then the rebuild really impacted my life. We won 15 games in 2005, went to a regional in year 2. That really gave me a lot of confidence moving forward to develop a program or at least see what needs to happen. Learned a ton there. And then got an opportunity to go to the SEC for 6 years. Gary Henderson was the head coach. He needed a hitting coach. He called. I went there, and some very pivotal things in my life happened there as well, which really have kind of shaped me and at 40 years of age, get the itch to be a head coach. My alma mater opens up in New Mexico State. Every reason why you can't win there and why you shouldn't win there and all that garbage that you hear in anything in life inspired me to want to go there as an alum. Won 11 games our first year, 34 the next, had the biggest turnaround in college baseball. And then after 5 years there, we had a couple of championships, a regional appearance, and you get the tap on the shoulder from Washington State. I haven't stopped smiling since, man. We live in Pullman, and I'm a head coach in the Pac, loving it. But we get to do it again. We get to do a rebuild, a redo in a sense, and at a place that believes you can win, has won, has a ton of support, a sick administration. And we picked up our entire coaching staff in New Mexico State, and we plopped them down here in Pullman. That was a proud thing to do for me. And here we go. We're off and running. We went 9-7 in year one, and feel good about where we're going. So that's a 5 or 4 minute recap of my career, but there's been a lot of moves. And how do you get here? Belief, desire, support from Becky and the family, loyalty. Stay true to your coaches, because there's always somebody who's going to pick up the phone, and whether it was Dennis Rogers at Riverside or playing for Hendu at Chapman, or Rex Peters at Chapman as a coach, Pat Casey, you really start to hear that. And the bottom line is you got to be loyal, and you got to appreciate the opportunities that you get. And in doing that, people will speak well of you if you're loyal to that program. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned moving into a head coach role is that, everybody's role and everybody's job is to make everybody's life better, and I didn't necessarily capture that as an assistant, but I know when you get into that director's chair, you could go back and be the best assistant coach in the history of mankind, because you understand the real things that matter: trust, truth, loyalty, support, team first. And so here we are. So thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, you're always crushing it, man. You're absolutely crushing it. And Dean, I just want one more question before you hop into it is, I'm very fascinated when I see college coaches who work their way up the ranks and they end up at a head coaching position, because just looking from the outside in, that was one of my old dreams before I realized how tough and how long you've got to stick in the fight to get there, because there's so many different levels. And just seeing some of my buddies who are at these not even recruiting coordinators, they're just volunteer assistants or director of baseball ops for 6, 7, 8, some 10, 15 years. And they don't get that opportunity right away. For you talked about the $80 check, and that's just like mind blowing. And now, in this time especially, there's a lot of college coaches listening in who are in those positions where you don't have a guaranteed salary, you don't have a guaranteed income, you have a family, you don't know what's going on. And now the camps are canceled. So there goes one source of revenue, or your main source of revenue, for the whole year. How did you stick with it and commit to your end dream of being a Pac-12 coach one day? How did you commit to that when times were not easy, when you weren't making money that you and your family needed, and all this tough things? It's just the reality of things.
I think when you ask me that question, I think of 2 S words. The first one being stupidity, and then the other one being support. But when I say stupidity, blind stupidity, and I'm being funny, but a real belief. Hey, we're going to make it. We're going to do this. And I just think, and as a coach, blindly, but that's how I think. I just think, and that's what we teach our players. But if you want to commit to something, and there's a vision, and there's a belief, and there's a support system in place. I had it with my wife, Becky. She knew me as a player in New Mexico State. I chased her down like I chased down a coaching opportunity, and she had wanted no part of me about dating me early on. But there was not a doubt in my mind that she was the right one for my life. I felt like she was going to impact my life. I literally chased her down and wore her down. She finally just gave in and just caved. And then, we get married, and here we are 23 years of marriage later, and really happy, but I think it just comes down to belief and then support. And those 2 things are really intertwined. I had it, I had support from Becky, and she believed in me as well. And I think it's more of a coaching tip, and then a never ending, I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to get defeated. Like anything in life, you hear no, but you don't accept no. You hear it, and then, okay, how am I going to go over and around, under and around, or just east, west with this? But no really doesn't exist. You're just going to find a way to be successful. And until you absolutely are told you can't do it anymore, whether it's financial or opportunity. And, that's why the New Mexico State thing for me, being in Kentucky was an incredible. All my experiences have been incredible, and I've been so fortunate. I've been around some unbelievable coaches. I mean, if I sit here and say, "Hey, Greeny, who have you worked for?" Nobody really, Gary Henderson, John Savage, Rich Hill, Elliott Avent, these Pat Casey, Dennis Rogers, just a bunch of guys who really haven't done anything in the game of baseball. And it's like, whoa. And then it was really important for me, or I tried to be really intentional with that, to grab what I could from those guys, what really stuck with me. And I've been able to kind of package it, but more important, we'll get into that too. I know with Dean about self-discovery, but again, I just think it comes down to a legitimate belief in yourself and in a drive in yourself to make it. And then I think for me personally, I had a driving passion, not for myself, but I had to prove it for Becky. I mean, that's at the end of the day, she gave her life up for me, is how I look at it. That's how I look at it in coaching with my administrators, or that's how I looked at it with my head coaches. Somebody gives you an opportunity, it's your responsibility to give it back to them in every way that you can. So that still is the drive and the path that we're on, is for me to get to Omaha as a coach. I've been to Super Regionals, I've been to Division III World Series or Final Fours, but I haven't been to the big dance yet. And that's the final payoff, not for me, but for Becky. Say, honey, this one's for you. And that's really what drives me, to be quite honest.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely incredible, man, especially when you do get to that vision and you're holding up the trophy and now you guys are celebrating together, man. It's like all these years, like, you stuck with me through the fight, like through the long bus rides, through the craziness, through no paychecks, through the uncertainty of where are you going to go this year? I'm bouncing from here to here to here. I'm living in 8 different states, like finding a way to win. The firm belief is incredible, man. Dean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow up with you when you were talking about the story, Coach. And I use the terms learning points and turning points. And so on that journey, from the smaller school through the UCLAs and the Oregon States, but then to Kentucky, New Mexico State, for you and working with those coaches, what were some either, I call them learning points, like major kind of things that you really took from some of those guys you got to be around? And also what were some like turning points, literally like, you might have like started to see things differently as a result of being around those guys, or, just perspective changed, or a belief system changed, or, either one of those. So like I said, learning points, turning points, just to share with some of these coaches and, they're listening in. I'm a big believer that we can learn through some other people's learning experiences as well. So what were some of those that, looking back, that impacted you?
Wow. Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think if I think just off the top, the 5, whether it's an event, or a lot of times it's going to be from your boss or your program, and I also think that learning points can be, Dino, things that didn't go well for you individually, where you get knocked down, or you reflect and didn't like who you were as a person or as a coach. Or for me, I think of things that made me uncomfortable as an assistant coach. I vowed to, if I ever got an opportunity to be a head coach, that I wouldn't do that to me. And I think a lot of times we do things unintentionally. We don't intend to do things. We just, things happen. But I think, to answer your question, I think about Dennis Rogers coming in, a green high school player, and then coming in on the other side of being a coach with him, but a professional way to do things where I'd never seen anything like that before. That was a big one for me. I do have, when I think about it, there's one really big one that I'll share, I guess, last. I think about Coach Savage, just from watching us in year 1 and then year 2, getting to the regionals, then a super and another regional, and we were Baseball America #1 in the preseason. But I think about watching a guy who really is an absolute grinder with recruiting and having a system and having a vision of recruiting. That's something that really stuck with me. It's been a learning point, a turning point, just like, man, a total commitment to recruiting and having a system. Plug you, turning point in my career, life, not career, but life, with Team Elite, 2012. Kentucky, our locker room is not where it needs to be, and we all know it, and we're trying to find an answer. And in 2012, seeing a locker room erupt, I'm crying. You see it. I'm watching a bunch of kids who were not team first and didn't believe in it, and they were too cool and all the garbage. And that really impacted me in terms of understanding, this is what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of this. this is what the fiber of me wants to be. But I think back to 2001. My wife tells me this. My parents tell me this. Working for Rich Hill in 2001, I grew up in the culture of Southern California. In my opinion, is how I viewed it was, you had to be very stern. You had to be pretty cool. Don't look in the stands, because if you do that, you're sloppy. You're not locked in. Every pitch you're focused. And Rich Hill, my boss, he was my first Division I paid job. I had that part-time. I was railing in a massive salary at $16,000, and raking it over the coals. And I remember I remember my parents and Becky would come to all the games, and they'd sit in the front row at USD back then. And I didn't talk to him, because that's how I was brought up. You don't look in the stands. That's not cool. And Rich was like, "Hey man, what are you doing? Your mom and your wife are there. Why aren't you talking? Why aren't you looking at them?" And I was like, "Well, I don't want to be disrespectful to you or your program, because I thought I was doing the right thing." And then I had a boss tell me, no. You need to engage with people who appreciate you, and you need to go over there and talk to them. And then that was like floodgates opened up for me. And I really think that impacted my life as a coach, in the sense of connection, appreciation. You smile. It's okay to smile. You don't have to be stoic on the field. And it actually works into kind of the whole circle of where we are with COVID now, is self-discovery, and we're going to get into vision and culture and leadership. But, that was a big one for me was when I look back, though, all of those coaches, the great coaches that I've been a part of, they're true to themselves. And I realized in 2001 that I wasn't true to myself. And that really helped me. And so Rich, as he knows, has a big impact on my life. But so is John and Case and Dennis and Gary. And, I've been very, very fortunate that I've worked for great people. But I also think that think of a lot of us work for great people. I think a great person, a great people to work for might just be some great person next door to you in a cubicle. And I just think sometimes we don't appreciate it, or we don't recognize it.
No, a couple of things that you alluded to in there, and you and I have talked about this, but I think it'd be important for some of these coaches to hear is, this word, in Austin and I have talked about this a lot, is authenticity. And so, from my seat on the bus, and that's what I see is you get a coach that comes in and they've coached under other people, and a real natural thing, whether it's coaching, business, leadership, whatever it is we see really good leaders, head coaches do things, and we try and emulate some of those things, pick up little tools and pieces, but we realize we can't become them, because that's them. And we're trying to find like our own voice within that stuff, which, kind of alludes to this authenticity piece, genuinely being kind of our true self, whatever you want to call it. So maybe a lot, and you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe just for some of these coaches too, that, regardless of where they're at in their career, talk about a little bit about, authenticity, kind of what it means to you, maybe why it's important, why it's important in your program, that kind of thing.
Well, we have a phrase in our program that we talk about as coaches. And, I believe in really, really, we Dino, as you know, we really invest in staff, but we really invest in ourselves and as a coaching staff. For any young coach to answer that question, but just, Eddie, who are you as a person? At the core, what are your core values? And if you don't have those core standards, values, principles, things that are really, really important to you, then how are you ever going to be the best version of yourself? So, I've taken a deep dive in this, and again, with you guys, Dino, being a part of my life, with Jerry Lujan being a big part of my life, you guys have been really so impactful for me, and in learning about self-discovery and authenticity, because what you just said is so true. We grow up, I look at Urban Meyer, unbelievable coach. Unbelievable coach. And I could never be Urban Meyer. That's just not who I am. But yet what he believes in, I believe in wholeheartedly. And so agree with it. But the delivery, is so different. Or Coach Carroll at Seattle in the NFL, or formerly at USC when I was at UCLA. That was miserable when we were Bruins, by the way, what they were doing at SC. But, you just think about – so I think it's really important that as a young coach, to maybe find that coach who maybe represents you as a person. And I think then if you have that, maybe you are a high energy guy, or you believe in strict, firm discipline, or no, you believe in hug, cry, vulnerability. You believe in your guys jumping up and down, or you believe in military dictator. You believe in that too. And I think it's so important. We all get confused by what we want to be and then what we should be because of who we are. And we cannot set a vision for our program. If you're a head coach, you certainly can't set a vision for your staff. If you don't know who you are, I have to know who I am, and I have invested deeply in who I am, and to illustrate my weaknesses and my strengths based on what other people think, but also just more important is who I am as a person. That sets the vision. I do want to cry in our program. I want to laugh. I want to cry. A tight spot in the game, I'll crack a joke. Clag it. I mean, it's, but that's just who I am. That's what and I think it's so important. So I think the best thing that I've learned, especially in this COVID time, I mean, I've listened to some unbelievable leaders, and you keep hearing the same thing from every different side of the screen. Self-discovery, authenticity. You have to spend time thinking about your thinking. And it starts with what's important to you as a coach. What are your core values individually? What's important to you? Is it family? Is it team first integrity? Is it skill development? Is it energy positive? Is it toughness competitively? Whatever that is, that needs to get out on paper, and then it needs to be an acronym, and then you need to be able to spit it out. And then your players should be able to spit it out too. And if they can't spit it out, then you're not communicating what you want in your program. And I think that's really where it starts. So I've been really fortunate to bump into a couple of key players, you, Jerry, and we have dove into this. I'll share this later on if you like, but I mean, we dive into self-discovery. We dive into staff culture. We study each other as people. And there's a whole nother thing, I don't want to get sidetracked on it, but if I know myself really good and I communicate who I am to my coaches, and I know my coaches really well, just in terms of what that makes them tick, what disrupts them, what is going to create conflict for us when we know that. And then it just goes into, hey, bring a bunch of good people into your team and then define who you are. If you've got good people and we know each other, well, we're going to respect each other. And guess what? Conflict goes down, communication goes up, ideas start flowing, and the next thing you know, you're cranking, and it feels good and there's energy. So I'm really, really pumped to talk about that, because it's just, for me, it's the secret. I just think that we're onto something that others aren't, but it's, the corporate world is talking about it. The best coaches are talking about it in all sports. And it's something you have to invest in, and none of us do it. Going right back to, I think a lot of us are just afraid to get vulnerable, or to say, I don't know, or I want to learn something new, or maybe we're just afraid to be too cool. And what I think is cool is being authentic, being vulnerable, and letting everybody know I want to learn. And that's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, you're asking those kids to be in an open growth mindset, your players. And I mean, I think, I don't know if any of these coaches on the line are parents, but that was the number one thing I learned about parenting is my kids are going to learn way more from my actions than any advice that I have to share with them. And I think you can apply the same thing, to players on a team. Let me ask you this. And I know Austin's got a couple of questions just because somebody put this up on the Q&A. Somebody had asked about, what I think they said, maybe what's the most important thing, or maybe a couple things that you guys as D1 coaches, look for when you're out there recruiting players and watching for them. What are some of the, like the key points for you that you're watching for when you're recruiting a kid?
Yeah, I'm glad a coach asked that. Obviously, let's assume that the player is a good player, because at the end of the day, we're going to bring in skill, so, when coaches get going on talking about makeup and toughness and competitiveness and academic and intelligence and competitive IQ, skill IQ, and all those things, we have 5 factors, Gene, that we do. And I just mentioned them, but aside from being a good player, which, the video brings you, this is life or death. And we had a Green Beret on yesterday with our team, and he was talking about life or death. Well, we treat it as life or death too. If we're going to bring someone into our family, if this person is going to create instability within our group or is going to distract our group, that's life or death. Because if we disrupt the culture of the team, we're not going to win. And I learned that very clearly at Kentucky. You learn that in the SEC. Two things that happen if you've got or in a Power 5 conference. If your locker room is unstable or if you get injured, it's not just a weekend, it's 3, and in 3 bad weekends, you're eliminated. So, but going back to that, Dino, it goes into assuming play, then it gets into number one for us is the campus visit or this communication right here. I put a premium on body language. We study it. We beat kids down in the recruiting process. I'm going to spend 3, 4, 5 hours with families when they come to campus. That's my role. But most important is I want to see who's doing the talking, mom or dad. That's a real issue, especially in the days of which good now the rules have changed. We don't have 14-year-olds on campus, or we're not communicating with them where you're just talking to mom and dad. But I think it's really important that the player talks and speaks. But I'll give you a perfect example. When Nick Gonzalez came to New Mexico State, this guy sat in a chair and I gave a recruiting presentation for an hour and a half, and he locked eyes on me and he looked through me for an hour and a half. The guy didn't breathe. He didn't wince. He didn't wink. Nothing. Just, locked in. And his dad was too. And then guess what? That's the same guy in the dugout. And he was laser locked. You better show up every day for Ortiz or Gonzalez every day with a message. If you didn't show up prepared, those guys are going to eat your lunch. But I think the body language we put a real premium on. That's the culture component, the academic piece. That's the intelligent component. And then the competitive side of things, how does that player look? Or we try to get a feel for him and, his enemy game or his playoff game or, the big rivalry game. We try to place a premium on those things, and then obviously hustle. It would be the last one that you're looking for. Those are all the areas outside of the play, but we just do. And I don't think, and I don't believe as a coach, I only think this now. I didn't think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he's a great player. He's a good kid. I can fix him. I don't really have interest in that. He's a good player, but he's a turd, and I don't like he's going to affect your culture. And then we all know as coaches or teachers or educators, you got a class of 30, you got one kid who gives you the bad body language or he disrupts the class. You spend all of your time thinking about that one kid and you're ignoring the 10 that are legit for you. And you, the leader, are ruining the culture because you're focusing on the bad seeds. So I think it's really important to focus on it. We do. I just put the premium on the communication piece, the body language piece, and then we really sell it on the front end. I spend a lot of time in the recruiting process educating the families on what is to be expected if you were to come to school here. And the fascinating thing with that is you realize in recruiting, you're not selling, you're presenting. And here's who we are. And then people are just drawn to you. And literally, not just us, but anybody. A guy's extremely academic and wants big city. That Pullman's probably not the spot for him. It's a very small college town. But if you want big city life, you're going to love Washington or UCLA. And we want to draw that out. We don't want to trick people or fool people. We want to make sure that this is a real fit and there's alignment. So when we show up together, the expectations were clear. There was trust. There was truth. And then, man, you get that, you can build something.
Let me ask you one last follow-up in terms of the body language part of it. Who are some of the people you will talk to in the recruiting process to try and find some more of that kind of stuff out?
Well, we have a questionnaire that Coach Davis, our recruiting coordinator, will fill out and put on our desk as coaches. But we know going into it that the body language, that's part of the notes section. But, we won't even get to that spot. I mean, we're going to evaluate it in the dugout. We're going to evaluate the summer coach. We're going to evaluate him on the phone. Again, it is life or death. I mean, if this guy's culturally not, in, or he's a challenge personality, and I could really veer and go this way. But, I mean, we get so into it. Our deal is we get into personality testing with our coaches. We get into personality testing with our players. We get into our whys. Everybody's why gives us a better opportunity to understand kids. But really what we look for in the recruiting process is really just one thing, and that would be just respect. I think when a kid is in a chair, if he's doing this, I'm going to bring that up in the recruiting presentation, and I'll even remind the student, hey, when I was talking earlier, you remember when you were bobbing and weaving and you were losing well, that tells me that you have a lack of individual awareness, and it also to let you know that that's something I would pounce on you, if you came to our program. And it's person first, player second, and that's how you build culture, and that's where it starts. So we really build it in the recruiting process and kind of phase it out.
Well, before Austin asks his question, I'll just say it sounds like in your conversation with Joe Madden last week that you passed the body language test on when he was talking to you. Share that story with these coaches real quick about what he said to you.
Well, I had the opportunity to speak with him, and yeah, he was, we were talking about just building culture, and obviously I was just listening, and this star-studded, and listening to this unbelievable person who's just so normal and is so energized as a leader. But he talked about the core values going into a wall, and it was whatever his terminology was for it, but really talking about just creating something that is yours individually for the team. So, and what I learned from him was so important is that, we at the top, when we're building a team, each team is different. And so when it comes to core values or standards or principles or the things that the characteristics that are going to shape each team, the players have to create that. But at the same time, there are some non-negotiables that come from the top. And yeah, I don't want to get too far into that and break trust, but I can certainly say that body language and buy-in was certainly a non-negotiable that was coming in from the coaching staff onto that core value wall. Yeah.
Awesome. Go. I know, Austin, you got a couple questions. We want to definitely talk some culture with you too. So go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, no, you're good. I love those questions, and it's very valuable to any athletes or coaches that are looking to send their kids or go to the next level and to play there, to see what a high level program is looking for and what culture really is all about. And you mentioned a couple of things that really stuck out to me, Coach, was identity, like your identity as a person, most importantly, because you think about it. And as a college athlete, college and professional, when you go home for Thanksgiving break or you go home for Christmas, a lot of the times you get asked, hey, are you getting drafted? How's baseball going? What's the coaching staff like? Who's around? How's Paul Goldschmidt? How's this? How's that? And they never ask about you and like your actual person. It's very, very rare, especially extended family. And the identity piece, especially in college with all the distractions that are around us, is huge. But I want to get into the fact about identity as a team and creating that culture, creating the vision. How do you as a team, with the limited hours that you have with the NCAA and with all the different things that you've got to kind of walk around, tiptoe around at that level, what is your plan going into the fall to create that vision? You mentioned in the recruiting process, you're kind of recruiting your culture too, which I think is huge. I love that fact. But when you get there, you've got your select group of 25, 30 guys, and these are the dudes that I'm going to war with. Like, we're going to battle. How do you start to build that culture throughout the fall in hopes of it coming out in the spring when you guys actually take the field in competition?
Well, it starts in recruiting. And when I say it starts in recruiting, and I'll certainly veer into our program, but it starts with being really intentional in recruiting of, look, this is what you're going to get if you come play for us, this coaching staff. You're going to get and be expected to be vulnerable, laugh, cry, jump up and down like a maniac, go out and ring a bell for Salvation Army. You're going to push a wheelchair kid for Special Olympics around. You're going to play basketball with him. You're going to have to meet your professor. You're going to have to walk into a football stadium in your baseball uniform. You're going to have to go knock on a door. You're going to have to place the needs of the team above your own. And you have to know that on the front end. So we're very intentional with that in the recruiting process in terms of, here is our culture program. And I'll actually share this with you. I'll share the screen here in a minute, but we have it. It's very intentional in the recruiting process. So we get people that are actually drawn to wanting to do that. We, even if you look at our current team versus the kids that are coming in right now, there's a different personality, and that's just life. You're recruited by another coach, and then you're recruited by a different coach, and the sales, deliveries are different in terms of what we're promoting. So that's where it starts is in recruiting. And I just think it's so critical that in that piece, then it becomes the recruiting coordinator, the pitching coach, the volunteer, the head coach. There is complete alignment in who we are as a program. And if I can, I'll share this, but,
Yeah.
we have, how's that look? Dino, Austin, we good there?
Perfect, Brian. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm so intentional with it. And I've learned from that. I look back, you build on your experiences. You look on the turnaround in Kentucky from 11 to 12, with the same exact team, but you get maybe one more personality energized in there. You become more intentional with the locker room. And the next thing you know, you go from mid-20s to 45 wins, and you're playing for an SEC championship the last weekend of the year with the same kids, minus a few different personalities. And I just think, and I'll put that slide up, but for us, it's build a program, not a team. This is about building a program. This is about building something sustainable to where if we leave, we leave New Mexico State and there's still 10 RVs in the parking lot. There's an RV program was built. That was our culture. But I think it starts with your vision individually and as a staff. I think everything is about the staff. I think everything is about the staff. Formulating it, hiring it, people first, skills second. I think so many coaches, again, my opinion now, just from my learning, I'm 6 years into being a head coach, so I clearly don't have much. But I do know that where I am, what's really important to me is that good people are going to come in, and guess what? I think good people are part of your program. They'll develop into great coaches because baseball is a skill game, and we can all become better. But understanding that there's more than you and your program, it's about your university. I think is really important to understand as a coach, irrelevant of level. Our job as a coach is to make the school, the college, the university that we're at better. That's our job. And we have been given an opportunity I've been given an opportunity to work at Washington State University. It's not about me and promoting Washington State baseball. That's a part of my job, but my job is to promote Washington State athletics. My job is to support our administration. My job is to support our president, because all of our lives are on the line. And when we think of it like that, even if you're at the high school level, or if you're the freshman coach or you're a JV assistant coach, our job is to make that program great, and then the school great, and then the state great, and all that. That's our job. And I just think that comes down to respect. So I think it's really important to understand the external team. We get so myopic as coaches that the pressure of winning and losing, I think we lose sight of the fact that, if that athletic director hired you, you have a responsibility to show up for him every day because he brought you in. And that's what we try to transfer down to our players. And I think that's what builds culture. Core values, we have an oath. I think you got to be intentional, and I think you've got to be able to measure it. So I'll show you a couple other things because it's going to build into some questions. While
you're pulling those up too, Coach, just something for the coaches on the line to think about too, is you just were talking about that it's not you, it's the program, it's the school, it's the community, it's all that. And I go back to right when you first jumped on the call and Austin was introducing you, and hey, thanks so much for being on here. And you literally said, thanks for having us. Yeah. And so it's like little subtle things like that, just the language that you literally use at certain times. That it wasn't thanks for having me, it was thanks for having us. And so, like I said, just like you said about being intentional with even down to the most minute detail of the word us versus me. And I'm not saying me is wrong or right. It's just a different way, but it's little subtle things like that. So sorry. So jump back to what you were saying. It just, as you were saying that, it made me think back to right when we first got you on the call.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But, and I'll get so dang fired up. I'll start veering left and right, but I got to make sure I wrote that question up. It's about, building culture within the fall. But, it starts with your staff. We take a staff retreat. It's a critical component of us. And when we take the retreat, I always come in and I've got, these full notebooks, and we're going to talk about each other, number one, and we're going to talk about culture, number one, and we're going to talk about program values, oaths, standards, characteristics, principles. And then we're going to get to baseball on the third day. Is the third year in a row. We never even get to the baseball. And if we do, like, we start talking about an execution round in BP, and they're like, hey man, we're good. Let's dump the books. Let's go hang out with our wives, because what's really important is the staff. And it just is. We can't talk about family. We can't talk about culture. I know for me, my first year as a head coach, I was talking about culture. We were talking about my core values. And then I was talking about go around my coaching staff and impact our players. And the whole thing is the staff. So how do you build it in the fall? Well, it starts with, number one, who you hire as a good person, flat out. We have great people at Washington State. I was really proud to be able to plop up everyone in New Mexico State. Dean, you said it when I said thanks for having us on. Even the opportunity to come to Washington State. I didn't get the Washington State job. We got the Washington State opportunity because we won 2 championships at New Mexico State, and we built a program. And not enough of us think that way. It's a team rule of ours, the I-we challenge. If you say I, come back around and replace it with we. You'll hear me do that. It's intentional. I think all the great coaches do that. We talk about we and why, us and team. But it starts with that staff being intentional with it, and then it moves right into we determine who we are as people. My why is to establish relationships that are built on and based around trust. And that is all of my coaching staff, who they are as people, what makes them tick. I'm going to breeze through that because our guys might not want to do that, but or not want to share that. But we're going to know who we are as people. I dive into that hard. And we do it because if I know who Terry is as a person and he knows who I am as a person, then he knows that I know that Terry needs a lot of information, and Terry knows that I necessarily don't, but Terry also knows that I like to zig and zag and all those things. And because we know that, we can communicate at a really high level. And as long as we live into the oath of placing the needs of the team above our own, then we'll communicate at a high level. Building culture, though, intentionally starts with that, the core values of the program. Every coach on the staff knows that. And then it goes into the 3 principles of what we have. Those are ours. Those are our pillars. What gets all of us up out of bed every day. We have 3 jobs that are going to impact Washington State: recruit and develop, inspire the community, and teach within the system. That's it. And what really feeds off of that are each of our whys and then the vision for our program. But this would be, Austin, to answer your question. Those are some things that we do very intentionally. How do you build culture? Well, we turn it into, we have a thing called culture training, and it's promotion and it's, but we use that word, but can you imagine being a baseball player and your coach says for 12 days, we're not going to get on the field. We're going to invest in team. We're going to invest in ourselves. We're going to invest in culture. And then you defend it and you make the statement of value that the locker room is critical and leadership is critical and your body language is critical and knowing the core values of the program is critical. So we just turn it into kind of a 12-day education period of you're going to get out, you're going to start taking pictures with your professors. We're going to have core values, that Go Cougs acronym I showed you. You're going to have to come out and present that. You have to take an oath. We're going to pick a book. Last year was Culture Training or Training Camp by John Gordon. We read the book, so I got in touch with John Gordon, and the next thing you know, he was Zooming with our team and just taking it to another higher level. And then the whole thing is about person first, player second. That's the sell because it's the belief of the staff. It's my belief. You get a bunch of good people who do things right. Good people tend to think that the needs of the team are more important than their own. Well, you get a bunch of guys committed to that. You get a bunch of guys committed to not being afraid to share honest and open ideas in a locker room. Somebody needs to hustle more or be more team first or any of that stuff. Baseball take care of itself because they're going to get enough reps. So that's my belief. And I saw it kind of firsthand in New Mexico State. I saw it really trigger in 18 when the coaching staff really started to walk the walk. And then the buy-in, I think, really elevated. And so now you've got a bunch of staff members at Washington State, myself included, that, man, we are so hell-bent on this and believe in it so wholehearted that we're investing more in it. So I just think you got to be intentional with it. And again, Austin, just like anything else, if you as a coach, if that's not your deal, then don't do it. If your guys are, if you want to be dictator and military, that's great too. And there are great coaches that do that, but that's not me. And I've tried to be that guy. I'm this guy. So what I am is I try to do what matters most to me and our coaches and pass it on to the players. And then we all have the same identity, personality on the field, and then it smells and acts and looks the same. And I think that's the art, and it's really challenging to get it. And I just think the one thing we lose sight of is that there's so many people that are going to impact that. We've got to share, and I do. I mean, our compliance people are over, and our field guys over, and everybody knows our core values, and everybody knows what we're about, and everybody's going to touch your player. It needs to be invested in who you are culturally. So you got to be really intentional with it, and it takes a lot of work, but then it becomes really easy. And I think you can create a program that can expand. That's what I think.
I think that's absolutely incredible, Brian. Just like seeing what you've done, and like you see Dean in there bringing the heat, man. Dean,
bringing
incredible. Look at that, man. He fired up. You got the veins popping out. I love it, man. But that's passion, right? That's passion, and I think that leads to success on the field. And the thing that really stuck out was the 12 days of no practicing, because as putting myself back in college athlete shoes, I'm going crazy. But then putting myself now in what I'm doing now with teams in the same field, I'm like, wow, that's epic. Like, that's got to happen everywhere. I wish that more teams were doing this. You mentioned some of those things about the culture and how you build it, and you involve the community a lot. You talked about like the RVs in New Mexico. Now you're doing the same thing over in Washington State. And you talk about going to Special Olympics and spending time in the community. How valuable is that to spend time with the actual community to build that culture of the program and of the whole university?
Well, it's everything, and we represent Washington State University. We walk out into the community. We are Cougar athletes, and we're Cougar baseball players, 1, part of the athletic department, 2, part of Washington State, 3, part of the state, 4, boom, and on and on and on. But I just think, I tell people this all the time. Like, I want to win. At the end of the day, I want to win a championship. And my philosophy and my belief is that it's person first, player second. So we're going to invest in the person first. If we can get into a better person, I just think you're going to get a better player, period. So what can we do to impact the person? We go out in Special Olympics. We hunt it out. And I hunt those opportunities out, and I say it in the recruiting process, which is what you're going to be a part of. But like all of us, if I walk into Special Olympics tomorrow and there's a basketball practice going on and there's some kids in wheelchairs and there's some kids who are challenged, and I walk into that room in jeans and a white T-shirt and a pair of boots, people are going to look and go, hello. And if I walk in there again, walk back out and walk back into that room wearing a Washington State University uniform, that means something to those kids. And I think you have to teach your players. We teach our players that, hey man, this is a big deal. And you have a responsibility as a Cougar athlete. You can impact someone's life. People come out and support you. When people come out to the stands, say hello, wave, say thanks. I mean, I'm in heads of the stands all the time. And I think when you do that, you create better people. And if you do that, you're going to become a better player. That's the individual side of it, Austin. But then the secondary side of this is I want to win championships. And I want our kids, number one, to be really good with body language presence and be great salesmen of the university. But then you get out and you say thank you. Because the two things that the hardest thing for any person really to say is to say I'm sorry and say thank you. And we're going to teach you to say that because it's what strong people do. But when you get out in the Special Olympics and when you ring the bell and when you are meeting the professor, guess what? Guess what happens? More people support you. So maybe it's selfish, but at New Mexico State, we did all that stuff. We set 4 season attendance records. So there is a correlation, but I think in anything in life, the most important thing that I could tell you is this: if you want anything in life, you go earn it. You want people to support you, then you go support the community. Don't sit around and bitch that nobody's out there supporting you. You want fans, then get out in the community and say thank you. And boy, would it mean a lot if you came and supported us. And how can I support you locally with business? You look at Coach Rollo right now, our new football coach. He is crushing it out in the community. And the support he's getting, right? I mean, he's buying out nights and sending out on Twitter, hey, 30 free pizzas on me. And it's incredible. But that's a testament to our administration. It's just that's who we want to be in Pullman. And that's why we were all kind of aligned and drawn to each other. But again, I just think it goes back to, if you want something in life, earn it. I want to create great people. We're going to attract great people. And then for me personally, it's very personal to me. So again, being authentic, I had a cousin who passed, who was challenged in a myriad of ways. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't talk. And I'll never forget when I rolled him around in a home run trot in the wheelchair at UCLA. I look over at his family, and game's over. We had just beaten USC and felt good, and it's a Sunday. And I roll my cousin Philip around on the wheelchair, and first time I'd ever done this, and they're UCLA diehard fans. So it's a big deal to them just to be on the field and roll him around. And we hit home plate, and he's got this smile on his face that I'd never seen that big of a smile, because he couldn't really communicate. He was, and I look over at his mom and dad, and they're crying, and I get choked up when I tell that story, but I remember how that made me feel. It made me feel good. It made me feel like I had an impact on my cousin's life. Then I got to Kentucky, and that was a part of the fiber of what Kentucky athletics did, and I thought it was awesome. So now being a head coach, that's just what we're going to do, because it's awesome. I want to be a part of that, and it's great to give to someone, and make like you feel like you're making an impact in someone's life. And college athletes, you're in a Power 5 school in a Pac-12, SEC, ACC environment. You have a responsibility, because you are a big deal. And we try to communicate that. And I think sometimes coaches don't communicate that effectively. And I think it's really important.
I think that's absolutely beautiful, Brian. And I'll let you go here in a minute, Dean, but just touching on that aspect of the Special Olympics is it's so powerful, and seeing the joy in somebody else's face. And then for me personally, my brother having autism and going through that, never being allowed to play baseball. So having him as a bat boy when I was at Nevada for 4 years, and having him in the dugout and celebrating home runs and giving him the fist bumps and pumping him up, there's no better feeling. So I can't even praise you enough for what you're doing in the community with that aspect, because it's very meaningful to a lot of people that are around you and people that are on the outside looking in at what you're doing. So I think that's incredible, man. Go ahead, Dean.
No, I'll just, and one last thing on that too, coaches are always looking for ways to, ingrain the mindset of their players about, gratitude or being selfless, or, and so to take something outside of the game and teach it to them in that way. Just from a teaching perspective, just opens up so many other, opens up their perspective to it, and just seeing it in another way than just in a team setting, on a baseball field. So it's such a cool way. I'm guessing a lot of these coaches are starting to think about, what's ways within their program that they can, teach lessons that they want to teach, for a team wise outside of the game of baseball. I know they're already doing it, just looking for other ways. And I just want to ask you a couple, just because a couple of questions popped up on there. Because I know we're starting to get down to starting to wrap this up, but just a real quick one. Somebody asked, hey, because I know you've dealt with this player before, what would be some advice you'd give somebody jumping from they've been at a JC and now they're coming to a 4-year school? What would be some advice you'd give to somebody making that transition?
Boy, that's a good question, because we had a bunch of those at New Mexico State.
Right.
We were kind of a JUCO heaven. Great junior colleges in the state of Arizona. And such an easy transition over to New Mexico State. But I would just tell you, I think a lot of times, the older player, you have a real advantage. I love junior college players, but the junior college player has the advantage over the high school player in the sense that you've just gone 2 years of showing up every day and having to grind. There's really no legislation at the junior college level. So you've got a real advantage one of the things that I think is critical is to understand that routine that you had developed as a player, coach, and being able to be out there, every day. Boy, take that opportunity now. And because the legislation NC2A wise might be limiting you, now just take that routine and it might not be mandated for you, but get out there and work on your own. That's such a critical component of what we do here is routine and process, and mandating. And hey, look, one of my 3 pillars, again, recruit and develop. So that's my pillar. I mean, I'm selling it to your family in the recruiting process that if you come here, my responsibility to you and your family is to develop your skills to send you out to professional baseball. So with that, I think on days off, you better be working. And if you're not, then you're not holding up your end of the bargain. So I think that's a really important piece. But with the current legislation and where we are, junior college players, in my opinion, have a tremendous advantage of work ethic. Those JUCO coaches just run them crazy. I love JUCO. I mean, I was at Riverside as a player and as a coach, and you're out there for 5 hours every day, and you learn how to be tough, and you learn how to show up every day. So that's what I would say.
And let me ask you this one. I see we got Coach Alvarez on there. Good to see you, Abe. Just asking about what in terms of kind of your confidence as an assistant coach, and kind of how you develop that, and also how you develop kind of that through the authenticity portion as well, like confidence as yourself, but being authentic as well, especially when you were an assistant.
Well, number one, that's Coach Alvarez. You saw him on there. I don't want any part of that guy because it was the nastiest left on left. And he probably doesn't even know that I was the head coach at Kenai when he was in Matsu, and he just punched left on left, and I had no depth, and I couldn't helpless. But regarding that thing, I just think it's so. Dino, there's a carrot, in my opinion. Look, this is what I think, but we all take it. We all want it. You look at our guys here at Washington State. They're tremendous people, and I think the carrot, especially with social media, the opportunity to self-promote. Look, you're a part of our program, Dino. We recognize the privilege to be a member of the team, and the most important thing you could say as an assistant coach is that you promise to place the needs of the team above your own, period. And if you do that and you place the needs of the team above your own, and it is entirely about the team, and your loyalty it's all about your loyalty to the team. Just do that. Show up every day. Your head coach is going to speak well of you, which means he's going to help you get another opportunity, or he's going to keep you within his program. Even if you're not being successful within your area, you're going to get another opportunity or another year. I just think that's so important as assistants. I think we run into them all the time, or we see the guys who are constantly promoting themselves, and it's just all about self-promotion. You're losing sight of the real thing here. The real thing is impacting players, developing players, and placing the needs of the team above your own. If you do that, you look up and you're in the game for 20 years. And really, for any assistant coach, for all of us to make it, it's a battle of attrition. Just stay in the game. Because if you stay in it, if you get past that 6-7 year mark where you're in, well, then you're in. And then you're going to have enough people of a network to be able to talk, pick up the phone, help you move on. Obviously, Abe's a great program with a friend of mine and TJ, and an opportunity there. I mean, tremendous opportunity, and I know it'll be great. But any of those coaches, I just think it's so important. Place the needs of the team above your own. Don't take the carrot about promoting yourself. When you're out recruiting, recruit for the team. Not about being seen, not about connecting with other coaches. Your job is to recruit for your school. And your job is to, when your head coach asks you your opinion, you have one. And if you went out to see a catcher, I'll never forget Coach Henderson told me this way 20 years ago. He said, don't ever forget this. When you go out and recruit and you're out locked in on the shortstop, don't ever forget that your head coach might ask you, hey, tell me about the right fielder. Where did he hit in the order? And guys who are locked in have no clue. And I learned that from Coach Savage as well. You watch, the guy's the most dialed in recruiter ever. I mean, he's going to game sheet everybody. He knows every player. But provide your value through your work ethic, and then the most important last thing I'll say on that would be player position. If you don't know or aren't clear on your position within the program, ask your head coach. but you have a lane that you've been assigned to, and stay in that lane and make that lane the best lane that you could possibly have as an assistant coach to provide value to you for yourself and provide value to the team. And I think when as a head coach, if you can get guys in the right lanes and then demand that everyone plays their position at a high level, head coach included, man, it's on. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I'll kick it back to Austin to wrap this up. The only thing I wanted to say was, you see patterns and things like that. And when you look at, like, let's take a Bill Belichick, or let's just take him, for instance, and you hear his story, and, when he was an assistant, he did exactly what you're talking about. He like knew every part of his job. He did it, wasn't looking to promote himself, wasn't really like, trying to be a head coach. He was just trying to be the best assistant coach he could possibly be, and just did that. And then, it's just interesting. Opportunities just seem to come to those people. It just tends to work out that way. I mean, that's a football example, but, I know you could go down the line with guys doing exactly what you just talked about. Do your job. Don't miss any details when you're out on the road. Be prepared to answer every possible question that head coach might throw back at you. I mean, all those, because you're doing the right thing when you're out there on the road. So no, it's a great answer. And whether you're an assistant coach listening on this call, or you're even if you're a head coach, it's just different. It's a lot of the same, certainly some of the same concepts and messages there. So cool. So no, I know we're starting to wrap this up. Austin, yeah, what do you got for some last couple questions so we can wrap it up?
Yeah, no. First of all, Brian, appreciate you hopping on, man. This has been incredible, and I know for all three of us, we could probably sit here and talk culture, mindset, all the above for hours on end. And now my juices get flowing, so I should start doing these in the morning, because now my night times are like, I'm just like fired up, ready to go. I need to go run or something. It's hot out here though in Arizona. But I'm just getting into it, touching on personal experience at Nevada with Coach Jay Johnson, just how important culture is, and how, like you said before, you said you took the same team roughly with a few interchangeable players and won so many more games the next year. It happened with us too. We went from 25 to 35 within 1 year with the same players and maybe worse. And just the culture that we had, the buy-in was incredible. And what happened was he started to bring people in like Dino, like Carlene Sugarman, like Jager, like all these different like people who come in and like they just pump us up. They give us a little wisdom nugget, and then we move on and we continue to plant the seed. Now for you, being in the position that you're at, you've been in so many different areas, at so many different programs under some incredible head coaches, like Hall of Fame coaches. And I know you've learned a lot. What is one piece of advice that you would give to any coach out there, maybe 25-year-old you who's just getting started in this process of becoming a head coach one day? What piece of advice, what wisdom nugget, what little tip or tool would you give to them to stay true to yourself and to get to that level one day?
I wish I would have 15 years ago spent more time thinking about my thinking. I'm so just crazy about core values. I'm crazy about coaching philosophy, vision, leadership. So what I would say, whether you're 25, 45 or whatever, is right now, write down what your values are. What are the 3 or 4 things that are critical to you as a person? And then what are the 3 or 4 things that are critical to you in your area? What is my coaching philosophy? I mean, if you're ever sitting in an interview chair, it's the first thing somebody's going to ask you, hey, coach, what is your philosophy on coaching? And we don't think about that. Literally, it's like, start with what is your philosophy on coaching? How are you going to impact the player to get the very best out of him? What is your thought on that? Write it down. Start with an acronym. What is your coaching philosophy in an acronym? What are the 3 things that you have to see with your kids? Competitive toughness, team first integrity, family, whatever it is, energy. And then do the same with your area. Get detailed with your area. And the best thing that I could say with that as a starting point is what I'm trying to do right now. It's an opportunity with free time. I want to speak as much as humanly possible so I can get reps at speaking, so I can improve at speaking, so I can be a better coach for my players. So go get the reps, hunt the reps out. If you're a high school coach, go hunt little league coaches and talk hitting or present. But you can't do that until you get your deal down, and what are your acronyms? What are your core values? And then most importantly, just determine or define what's really important to you. And I think it starts with thinking about your thinking and being specific with it, which means you got to be intentional. You know, you go into an office, you shut the door, you turn your phone off, and you say, man, I'm gonna spend today. What is my core value principle? What's my philosophy? You know, what are the standards that are really important to me? You start to write that down, boy, and then all of a sudden you can create a vision. You can't create a vision if you can't start with knowing who you are. So know who you are, and then work into a vision. I think it's critical. But if that'd be my advice, Austin, would just go back, dude. Get your coaching philosophy, get your hitting philosophy, get your pitching philosophy, get your leadership philosophy, get your cultural philosophy, and make it yours. And then you can start, if you're thinking about it, you can start looking for a little bit more, and then you're going to be able to grab things that are really impactful. And then that's when you start really borrowing, you know, because I mean, what's my philosophy? Well, I like to laugh. I like to hug. I like to cry. I like to have fun. And then after that, it's Dennis Rogers, John Savage, Gary Anderson, Rich Hill, you know, it's boom. There's pieces of all of us. Dean Wellams, Jerry Luan, like that. So that'd be my advice. And if I wish I could go back 25 or 20 years ago, if I would have done that earlier, I'd be a better coach today.
Coach, this has been awesome, man, and just learning from you firsthand. And Dean spoke extremely high of you for a long time now, but being able to hear it firsthand and just get to know you a little bit, man, it's incredible what you're doing for your athletes, the legacy that you're leaving for them, and the impact you're having on the people in your communities wherever you go, which has been awesome, man. So I'm thankful for you. I'm grateful that you were able to take the time out of your day for something like this, to be here with your program and everything that you do. If you guys are interested, follow Coach on Twitter, Coach Brian Green. Great follow. You can get the Cougars at, I think it's WSU Cougars BSB for baseball, correct? If you guys want to check into their program, definitely head in the right direction. It's incredible what you're doing for your athletes. And, man, best of luck here in the future, man. I hope we can continue to talk. And I just want to pick your brain on this culture. That PowerPoint was fuego, man. The wisdom nuggets all across the board, man. I'm fired up now.
Good. Yeah, I had some of those nuggets. I didn't show me jumping around like a mad fool when Dean comes in. Energy circle. I can't show that.
We need the video, man. That'll be episode 2. We'll get the video going.
Yeah, what stays with the team stays with the team. So that piece, but yeah. No, hey, thanks for having us on. Great opportunity for Washington State. You know, I was on as a fan last week with Murph. I'm following you guys, and it's an opportunity for all of us. We got a free opportunity to learn from these great coaches, and I mean, if you're not taking advantage of it, it's like, what are we doing? You know, so I appreciate what you guys are doing as well, and I'll see you next week with your next guest.
Let's go. Appreciate you, Coach. Have a good day, guys.
Go Cougs.